The falling capsule. The marketplace was alive with noise and color. Merchants shouted prices, children laughed, and strange animals cried out from their cages. Ships roared above as they landed on tall platforms. The air was full of the smell of spice, oil, and smoke. Jax, a human traveler, walked through the crowd. His boots were dusty from the long road. He had no real plan, only a small bag of coins and a wish for adventure. He had seen many markets before, but something about this place felt different. The people here were nervous. They kept looking over their shoulders as if waiting for something to happen. Then it happened. A heavy wagon rolled past, loaded with goods covered by a thick tarp. It was pulled by 3 strong beasts, their eyes glowing red in the dim light. As the wagon hit a bump in the ground, something slipped out from under the tarp. It hit the ground with a loud clang. The crowd went silent. The sound did not belong in the busy market. Heads turned, voices stopped. Even the animals froze for a moment. There, on the dusty ground, lay a strange capsule. It was silver and oval, about the size of a coffin. Strange lights flickered across, its surface glowing blue and green. The capsule gave off a low humming sound, almost like breathing. The merchant driving the wagon did not notice. He kept moving forward, shouting at his beasts. The capsule was left behind. People gathered in a circle around it. No one dared to touch it. Whispers spread quickly. "Is it a weapon?" one man asked. "Looks alien," another woman muttered. "It could be dangerous. Stay away." Jack stepped closer. His heart beat fast. He had seen machines, weapons, and even crashed pods before, but this one felt different. It felt alive. Then the sound came. Tap, tap, tap. The crowd gasped. It came from inside the capsule. Something, or someone, was knocking on the metal shell. A child screamed. An old woman crossed herself with trembling hands. Merchants backed away, muttering about curses. But Jax did not move. He felt his feet locked to the ground. His eyes stayed on the capsule. The sound came again, louder this time. Tap, tap, tap. The lights on the capsule grew brighter. A thin line of steam hissed from one side. The air smelled sharp like burning metal. "Leave it," a man shouted. "It's not ours. Let the soldiers take it." "Yes," another agreed. "We want no trouble. Back away." But Jax felt something deep in his chest. A pull, a call. He did not know why, but he wanted to see what was inside. He wanted to know who or what was knocking. The crowd began to scatter. Some ran, others hid in their stalls. The marketplace, so noisy only moments ago, was now silent except for the hum of the capsule. Jax took another step forward. His hand twitched near his belt where his small blade rested. He did not plan to fight, but fear made him ready. The capsule shook. Dust rose around it. The ground vibrated. Jax crouched low, eyes sharp. Then, with a hiss, a crack appeared along the side of the capsule. A thin beam of blue light escaped, cutting through the dusty air. The light was not like any lamp or torch he had seen. It was cold but alive. It danced almost like it was breathing. Jax's mouth went dry. His heart raced. From inside, a faint sound reached his ears. Not the tapping this time. No. This was different. It was a voice. A soft, weak voice. "Help." Jax froze. He was sure he had heard it. A word in broken, fragile tone. Human? Alien? He could not tell. But it was a cry. A plea. The capsule rattled again. The crack widened. More blue. Light spilled out, flooding the ground. Jax felt the pull stronger than ever. He wanted to run, but he could not. His instincts screamed danger, but his heart whispered another word. Hope. Behind him, a group of guards appeared at the edge of the square. They wore dark armor and carried shock rifles. Their leader raised his hand and shouted, "Step away from the object. No one touch it." The people obeyed. They bowed their heads, moved back, and tried to vanish into the alleys. But Jack stayed. His eyes stayed locked on the capsule. The crack spread wider. A cold mist spilled out, rolling across the ground. The voice came again, softer this time. "Please, help me." The guard leader shouted again. "Stay back, traveler. This thing is not yours." Jax's hand tightened on his blade. He felt his decision rising inside him, heavy as a storm. The capsule gave one final shudder. The crack burst open. A burst of light blinded the square. The crowd screamed, and Jax saw, just for a moment, a pair of glowing silver eyes staring back at him from inside. The alien girl. The market did not sleep. That night, soldiers sealed the square, their boots striking the stone like hammers. The strange capsule sat in the middle, glowing faint blue under the watch of armored guards. People whispered from the shadows, but no one dared step closer. Only Jax stayed, hidden nearby, watching from the roof of a crumbling stall. His heart had not slowed since the crack of light burst open hours ago. He could still see those silver eyes in his mind, eyes that did not belong to any beast or machine. He waited, until the soldiers grew tired. One by one they shifted in their armor. Some lit smokes, others leaned on their rifles. The captain barked orders, but even his voice carried boredom. Jax's chance came when the night deepened. A storm rolled across the sky, throwing shadows over the square. The guards pulled hoods over their heads as rain began to fall. The glow of the capsule dimmed under the wet mist. Jax dropped down from the roof and moved quietly along the edge of the market. His steps were careful, light as breath. He had stolen food and treasure before, but this was different. He did not want riches. He wanted to know who had called out. The capsule still hummed. Steam curled from its cracks, and the sound inside was no longer just tapping. It was softer now, like shallow breaths. Weak. Fading. Jax crouched close, hiding behind a cart. He waited, then slipped forward like a shadow. The guards were half asleep under the storm's curtain. He touched the capsule with his hand. It was cold. The surface shivered with light, and the crack widened at his touch. He pulled back, startled. But then he heard it again. "Please." The voice was clear this time. A whisper, but alive. Jax pressed his hand against the crack. The capsule hissed, and a panel slid open with a sharp click. Blue mist poured out, wrapping around his legs like smoke. His vision blurred, but he forced himself to look inside. What he saw was not what he expected. A girl. She was small, no older than 16, her skin pale and marked with glowing lines that ran across her arms and neck. Her silver eyes flickered, weakly as she tried to breathe. Her hair was dark, almost black, but it shone with streaks of blue under the capsule's light. She looked fragile, broken, as if the journey inside the capsule had stolen her strength. But her gaze was steady. She locked eyes with Jax, and in that moment, the market, the storm, the soldiers, everything disappeared. "Help me," she whispered again. Her voice trembled like glass about to break. Jax hesitated. He had faced raiders, smugglers, and even soldiers before. But this girl, this alien girl, frightened him more than all of them. Not because she was dangerous, but because she was innocent. The soldiers shouted suddenly. One had noticed the light shift. Boots thundered across the wet stone. Jax acted, without thought. He reached inside and lifted the girl. She was light, too light, like carrying smoke. The capsule let out one final hiss and shut itself, as if it knew its job was done. "Stop there," the captain roared. "Put it down!" Jax pulled his hood low and ran. The girl clung to his chest, her weak breath warm against his neck. The storm hid his escape. He darted through alleys, splashing through puddles, turning corners with speed he did not know he had. The shouts behind him grew faint, then vanished. Only the rain remained. He stopped in a dark passage under the old walls. His chest heaved. He set the girl down gently against the stones. She coughed, her body shaking. "Who are you?" Jax asked, his voice low. She blinked slowly, her silver eyes glowing even in the dark. "Lyra," she said. Her words were broken, but clear. Jax nodded. "Why are they after you?" She shook her head, struggling to speak. "Not safe. They want me. Her hand glowed faint blue, and when she touched his arm, the cut on his skin, made earlier by a shard of broken crate, closed in an instant. Jack stared at her in shock. Healing. With a touch. No wonder the soldiers wanted her. Footsteps echoed in the distance. The soldiers were not far. Jax helped her stand, though her legs trembled. We can't stay here, he said firmly. Lyra nodded weakly, trusting him, without question. Together they slipped deeper into the shadows of the city. The storm swallowed their tracks, but danger followed close behind. For the first time in his life, Jax felt he was not just running for himself. He was running for someone else. Someone fragile, someone powerful. And he knew the city would not forgive him for it. As they vanished into the darkness, the captain shouted in rage behind them, "Find the human! Find the alien! There will be no place for them to hide." The hunt had begun. The escape. The city woke angry. Soldiers marched through the streets with rifles in hand, shouting questions at anyone who crossed their path. Posters with Jax's face were nailed to walls before the sun even rose. The bounty was high, higher than most men would earn in a year. But Jax did not see any of this. He was too busy hiding in the dark corners of the city, carrying Lyra on his back. She was weak, barely able to stand, yet her silver eyes stayed awake. They watched every shadow, every sound, as if she had seen this kind of chase before. "Where are we going?" Jax whispered. "Far," she said softly. Her voice cracked. "Away. From them." He nodded. That much he understood. But leaving the city was not easy. Walls surrounded it and gates were guarded day and night. He needed a place to rest, to plan. Jax led Lyra into a scrapyard at the edge of the lower district. Broken ships, rusted engines, and piles of scrap metal stretched as far as the eye could see. The smell of oil and dust burned his nose. Few people came here. It was a graveyard for machines. They slipped into the hollow shell of an old cargo hauler. Inside, it was dry, dark, and quiet. Jax set Lyra down gently on a bed of cloth he pulled from his pack. "Safe?" she asked, her eyes searching his face. "For now," Jax replied. He tried to sound calm, but his heart still raced. Lyra closed her eyes and took slow breaths. A faint blue glow pulsed under her skin, moving along the lines across her arms. Jax stared at it, fascinated. "What are you?" he whispered. Her eyes opened again, tired but sharp. "Not what they say." Before Jax could ask more, a buzzing sound filled the air. A bright red beam swept across the scrapyard outside. A patrol drone. Jax cursed under his breath. He crouched low, peeking through a hole in the hauler's wall. The drone hovered slowly between the piles of metal, its light scanning left and right. Lyra's breathing grew fast. Fear showed in her glowing eyes. "Quiet," Jax whispered. He placed a finger on his lips, then gently covered her hand with his. Her skin was cold, but her glow warmed his fingers. The drone stopped. Its red light froze on the hauler. Jax held his breath. A second light switched on, then a third. The drone hummed louder. It had found something. "Stay here," Jax whispered, rising slowly. Lyra shook her head weakly. "No, dangerous." "I know," he said, drawing his blade. The drone fired a thin line of red light cutting through the metal wall. Sparks rained inside. Lyra gasped. Jax leapt forward, slashing the blade across the beam source. The drone screeched as its sensor cracked. It spun wildly, sparks flying. But before it could recover, Lyra raised her trembling hand. Blue energy burst from her palm, striking the drone. The machine exploded, pieces scattering across the yard. Smoke rose into the night sky. The silence after the blast felt heavy. Jax turned back to her, shocked. "You did that?" She lowered, her hand breathing hard. "Too loud," she whispered. "Now, they know." And she was right. In the distance, alarms blared. Spotlights cut through the darkness. The scrapyard lit up with search beams. Voices shouted orders. Boots thundered on metal walkways. "They're coming," Jax muttered. He grabbed Lyra's hand. "We have to move." They ran through narrow paths between mountains of scrap. Metal clanged under their feet. Shadows stretched long under the lights. Every turn felt like a trap, every corner a dead end. Jax's lungs burned, but he kept pulling her along. She was weak, yet her grip on his hand never let go. A soldier's voice echoed close. "There, by the engines." Gunfire erupted. Sparks exploded from the scrap around them. Lyra cried out, stumbling. Jax shielded her with his body, dragging her into a narrow gap. Bullets ripped through metal, but the gap was too tight for soldiers to follow. They crawled through, scraping knees and elbows until they spilled out the other side. Ahead, Jax saw an old ship half buried in the dirt. Its doors hung open, its insides dark. "Inside," he said. They ducked in, just as soldiers stormed the yard behind them. Jax pressed the door shut and held his breath. Outside, footsteps crunched, voices argued. A light swept past the doorway, then moved away. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the sound of soldiers faded. The alarms grew distant. Jax let out a long breath and leaned against the wall. Lyra collapsed beside him, trembling, but alive. "You saved us," he said, looking at her glowing hands. Her silver eyes turned to him. "No," she whispered. "You saved me." The words hit Jax harder than the bullets had. He wanted to believe he was only protecting himself, that this was just survival. But deep inside, he knew it was more. He was protecting her. And now, there was no turning back. The secret power. The scrapyard was silent again, but Jax knew silence in this city never lasted. Somewhere, soldiers were regrouping. Somewhere, hunters were already sharpening their knives. Inside the broken ship, Jax sat against a rusted wall, catching his breath. Lyra lay curled beside him, her faint blue glow casting light across the dark chamber. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. For a while, neither spoke. Rain tapped against the ship's hull, slow and steady, like a warning clock. At last, Jax asked, "What was that?" "Back there. The drone. You destroyed it." With one strike, Lyra opened her eyes slowly. Her voice was weak but steady. "Not destroy, release energy, control it." Jax frowned. Energy like a weapon. Her silver eyes fixed on him. "Not weapon. Gift." Jax shifted uneasily. He had seen men call power a gift before. Those men usually left nothing but ash behind them. Yet the way Lyra said it, gentle, fragile, made him believe her. "Why are they after you?" Jax pressed. She turned her face away, the glow of her markings dimming. "Because of what I carry inside. They fear it. They want it." Jax leaned closer. "What do you carry?" Lyra hesitated, then raised her hand. The glowing lines along her arm brightened. Slowly, light spilled from her palm, forming a small sphere of pure blue energy. It hovered above her skin, floating, humming like a heartbeat. The air around them vibrated. Jax felt the hair on his arm stand. He reached out, hesitating, then touched it with one finger. Heat rushed through him, not burning but alive. His heart pounded, his vision sharpened, and for a second he felt unstoppable. He pulled his hand back, gasping. The sphere vanished. Lyra whispered, "Life force. My people guard it. It heals, it protects, it destroys. If wrong hands take it, worlds burn." Jax stared at her, mind spinning. He understood now why soldiers wanted her, why the merchants placed a bounty. She was not just rare. She was power. Power that could change everything. "But why me?" Jax asked. His voice cracked, almost angry. "Why call to me? Why ask me to help?" Her silver eyes softened. "Because you stayed. All others ran." The words sank deep. Jax remembered the marketplace. The crowd had scattered, terrified. Only he had stepped closer. Only he had listened. Before he could reply, voices echoed outside the ship. Torches flickered through the gaps in the metal walls. Hunters. Jax cursed under his breath. He peeked through a crack. 4 men in leather armor searched the scrapyard, carrying shock spears and nets. Mercenaries, not soldiers, but just as dangerous. They found us, Jax whispered. Lyra struggled to sit up. Her hands glowed faintly. I can fight. No, Jax said quickly. He placed a hand on her shoulder. You're too weak. I'll handle them. He slipped out into the rain, blade in hand. The hunters spread out, scanning the piles of scrap. One whistled sharply, signaling the others. Jax moved fast, slashing at the nearest man. The hunter shouted as sparks flew from his broken spear. Another lunged, swinging a net. Jax rolled aside, cutting the net free before it wrapped around him. But there were too many. A spearhead sliced his arm, drawing blood. Another blow knocked him to the ground. The hunters circled him, grinning. Easy money, one sneered. Then the air changed. A hum, soft at first, grew into a roar. Blue light burst from the ship behind them, spilling across the scrapyard like lightning. The hunters froze, faces pale. Lyra stepped out, her eyes blazing silver, her body glowing brighter than the storm. The markings across her skin pulsed like living fire. The hunters stumbled back. What is she? Jax forced himself to stand, blood dripping from his arm. She's not yours. Lyra raised her hand. Blue energy swirled around her, rising like a storm. The ground shook. Sparks jumped from metal to metal. The hunters dropped their weapons and fled into the night, their screams echoing long after they vanished. Slowly, the glow faded. Lyra swayed, collapsing into Jax's arms. He held her, heart racing. You can't keep using that power. It's killing you. Her voice was barely a whisper. Not killing, just draining. But I must, or they will never stop. Jax looked out into the rain-soaked night. The hunters would spread word of what they saw. More would come. Soldiers, mercenaries, bounty hunters. He tightened his grip on his blade. Then we don't hide anymore. We fight. Together. Lyra's weak smile flickered. Together. And, in that broken scrapyard under the endless storm, a new bond was forged. Not of chance, but of choice. A human and an alien girl, standing against the galaxy. The betrayal. The night stretched long, and the storm finally passed. Jax and Lyra left the scrapyard before dawn, moving like shadows through the city's forgotten alleys. Their clothes were wet, their feet heavy, but they did not stop. They, new soldiers and hunters, would not rest. By sunrise, smoke rose from chimneys, and merchants opened their stalls again. But whispers followed Jax wherever he walked. His face was already painted on walls, his name cursed in the market. Everyone wanted the reward. Everyone wanted the alien girl. They could not stay in the city any longer. Jax led Lyra toward the outer desert where few dared to travel. Sandstorms, raiders, and old ruins made it dangerous, but to him, danger was better than chains. Hours later, when the sun was high and their bodies weak, they reached a lonely hut near the canyon edge. The roof was patched with scrap metal, and smoke curled weakly from a bent pipe. Jax knocked once, then twice. The door creaked open. An old smuggler stood there, his beard long and his eyes sharp. "Jax," he said, voice dry with surprise. "You still alive?" "Barely," Jax answered. "We need a place to rest." The smuggler looked past him at Lyra. Her glowing eyes flickered under the sun. His brows lifted. "Well now, what have you dragged in?" "A friend," Jax said quickly. "She's hurt," the smuggler chuckled. "Looks like more than a friend, boy." Still, he stepped aside. "Come in before someone sees." Inside, the hut smelled of spice and smoke. Old weapons lined the walls and crates of stolen goods filled the corners. Jax remembered the smuggler from his younger days, a man who could get anything for the right price. They had fought together once, back when Jax still believed in loyalty. Lyra sat down on a blanket while Jax explained their need for water, food, and a way out of the city. The smuggler scratched his beard, nodding slowly. "I can help," he said. "But help isn't free." Jax reached into his bag and tossed a pouch of coins on the table. "This should cover it." The smuggler's eyes gleamed, but not from the coins. His gaze lingered on Lyra. Her skin glowed faintly, the strange lines pulsing with life. "Pretty," he muttered. "Rare." Lyra lowered her head, uneasy. "You won't sell her," Jack said sharply. The smuggler raised his hands in mock surrender. "Easy, boy, I said nothing." But Jax knew that look. He had seen it on raiders, traitors, and thieves. The hunger of greed. Still, he had no choice. He let Lyra rest while the smuggler brought food and water. For a few hours the hut felt safe. Lyra even smiled faintly as she drank, but safety was only a mask. That night, as Jax dozed against the wall, he heard it. The creak of the door, the heavy step of boots, the clink of weapons. He opened his eyes. Soldiers stood in the doorway, rifles ready. Behind them, the smuggler smiled. "Sorry, boy," he said. "The price was too high. You understand." Jax's hand went to his blade. His chest burned with rage, not at the soldiers, but at the man he once called ally. Lyra stirred, her silver eyes wide with fear. "Jax!" The captain stepped forward. "Hand over the girl and we might let you live." Jax shook his head, slowly. "You'll have to kill me first." The soldiers moved in. Rifles rose. Jax grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her toward the back door. Shots cracked through the hut. Wood splintered. Fire sparked from old crates. They burst into the night, running toward the canyon. The desert wind howled. Sand whipped at their faces. Behind them, soldiers shouted and gave chase. Jax's legs ached, but he kept running. Lyra stumbled, her strength fading again. "I can't," she whispered. "Yes, you can," Jax shouted. He tightened his grip, refusing to let her fall. Blaster. Fire cut through the sand around them. One beam grazed Jax's side, burning hot, but he did not stop. He pushed her forward, every step fueled by fury. The betrayal burned deeper than the wound. Finally, they reached a narrow crevice in the canyon wall. Jax shoved Lyra inside, then followed, pressing against the stone as soldiers stormed past above. The two of them crouched in silence, breath ragged. The night was full of danger, but the soldiers missed them for now. Lyra leaned weakly against Jax. Her eyes glowed dim. Why betray you?" "Because that's what greed does," Jax answered bitterly. His jaw tightened. "He sold us for coins. That's all we're worth to him." Lyra touched his arm gently. "Not to you." Jax looked at her glowing eyes, at the trust still shining there despite the betrayal. He felt something shift inside. Him. "No," he whispered. "Not to me." The soldiers' voices faded into the distance, but Jax knew they would not stop. The smuggler had told them everything. From now on, no corner of the desert, no shadow of the city would be safe. And as he held Lyra close in that narrow canyon, Jax swore one thing to himself. He would never trust again. The revelation. The desert night was cold, sharper than any blade. Jax and Lyra sat pressed against the canyon wall, their breath rising in white clouds. The wound on Jax's side burned, but he kept his arm around her, keeping her steady. They had escaped again, but not without cost. Soldiers would keep hunting. The smuggler's betrayal meant their faces, their names, were now known across the region. "Why won't they stop?" Jax whispered into the dark. "Why risk so much for one girl?" Lyra's silver eyes lifted, to meet his. Her lips trembled as if holding back words too heavy to release. Finally she spoke. "Because of what I am. Because of what I carry." Jax frowned. "You already told me you have some kind of power, energy, healing. That can't be the whole reason." She closed her eyes, breathing slowly. The glow along her skin pulsed like faint stars. "I am not just one of many. I am the last. Her words struck him like a hammer. The last of what? Jax asked. Lyra leaned her head back against the stone and whispered, the Guardians of the Core. The name meant nothing to Jax. He shook his head. Never heard of them. You wouldn't, Lyra said softly. We were hidden. We lived in secret temples on worlds you humans never touched. For centuries we guarded something older than all your empires. Her hands shook as she cupped them together. Between her palms light formed again, a sphere brighter than before. It hummed alive, vibrating the air. This, she said, the heart light, a piece of the core. Jax reached out, staring at the glow. It's beautiful. It is more than beauty, she replied. It is life itself. It can heal wounds, grow crops, power cities, but in the wrong hands. Her voice broke. It can be turned into a weapon that burns worlds to ash. Jax's throat tightened. He remembered the hunger in the smuggler's eyes, the greed of the soldiers. He could picture entire armies wielding this light, not to heal, but to destroy. And, you're the only one left, he asked. Lyra nodded. My people were hunted. One by one, captured or killed. We hid the core's pieces across the stars, but I carry the last shard within me. That is why they want me. Not for me. For this. Silence stretched between them. The desert wind howled through the canyon, carrying grains of sand like whispers of ghosts. Jax clenched his fists. So, if they catch you, Lyra finished the thought. They take the last piece. The galaxy will burn. Jax rubbed his face, his mind racing. He had never wanted more than survival. Food, shelter, coin. That was his life. Now somehow he was standing between a girl and the destruction of everything. He looked at her again, fragile, glowing, yet strong in a way he could not explain. You should have let me walk away in the market, he muttered. Lyra's eyes softened. But you didn't. Before Jax could answer, a sound broke the silence. Heavy boots on stone, metal scraping, voices carried by the wind. Soldiers. Again. Jax cursed under his breath and peered over the canyon edge. Torches moved below. At least a dozen men climbed the rocky path. And leading them, his stomach turned at the sight, was a face from his past. The commander, his old mentor. The man who had trained him when Jax was still young, still foolish enough to believe in the honor of service. Of course, Jax whispered, bitterly. They would send him. Lyra frowned. You know him? Jax's grip tightened on his blade. Too well. The commander's voice echoed up the canyon. Jax, I know you're here. Don't be a fool. Hand over the alien and I'll make sure you get a clean death. Lyra grabbed Jax's hand. Her eyes pleaded. Don't. If he takes me. I know, Jax said, cutting her off. His voice was grim. That's why I can't. The commander raised his rifle toward the canyon. Last chance, boy. Step aside. Jax's chest heaved. He had fought raiders, hunters, soldiers. But this was different. This was the man who had once been his guide, almost like a father. Now he was the enemy. Jax looked at Lyra, at her silver, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She was weak, fragile, and yet she carried the power of life itself. He squeezed her hand once. Stay behind me. Lyra's voice trembled. You'll die. Then I'll die standing. The commander's voice thundered again. Choose, Jax, her or your life. Jax raised his blade, the storm of choice raging in his chest. He knew what this decision meant. He knew there was no turning back. The desert held its breath, and Jax stepped forward into the torchlight, his voice steady as stone. I choose her. The human choice. The canyon burned with torchlight. Soldiers fanned out across the rocks, rifles ready, their shadows long and sharp. The commander stood at the front, his black armor gleaming, his eyes cold as stone. Jax faced him, blade in hand. His body ached from wounds, but his stance did not waver. Behind him, Lyra pressed against the canyon wall, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Jax," the commander called, his voice carrying over the wind. "You can still walk away. Leave the girl, leave the burden, live." Jax spat in the dust. "You train me better than that, you know I don't walk away." The commander's lips curved in a thin smile. "Then you choose death." He raised his hand. Soldiers stepped forward, rifles aimed. For a heartbeat, the world held still. Jax tightened his grip, his blade trembling not from fear, but from the weight of choice. He had lived his life alone, running from cause, from loyalty, from hope. Yet here he was, standing between an alien girl and an army, and he would not move. "Fire!" the commander barked. Blaster bolts streaked through the night. Jax dove to the side, rolling behind a rock. Dust exploded around him. He leapt forward, slashing a soldier across the chest. Another lunged at him. Jax twisted, driving his blade into the man's arm. But there were too many. Lyra's weak cry echoed behind him. "Jax!" He turned just as a soldier aimed at her. Jax threw his blade. It struck true, knocking the rifle away. He sprinted back, grabbing a fallen weapon, firing wildly to push them back. The commander strode closer, calm as ever. His voice cut through the chaos. "You can't win, boy, you never could." Jax's chest heaved, sweat and blood mixing on his skin. "Maybe not, but I don't need to win. I just need to protect her." The commander raised his rifle and fired. Jax staggered as the bolt grazed his shoulder, pain ripping through him. He fell to one knee. Soldiers closed in, circling. Lyra crawled to his side, tears glowing in her silver eyes. Please don't leave me." Her hands glowed faint blue. She pressed them to his wound, healing as fast as she could, though her strength was fading. The commander watched with sharp interest. There it is, her power, enough to rebuild armies, enough to crush worlds. His voice lowered to a growl. "And you protect it with your life?" Foolish. Jax forced himself to stand, wincing. His blade was gone, but his will remained. He stepped in front of Lyra once more. "If protecting her is foolish," he said, his voice steady, "then I am the greatest fool alive." The commander's eyes hardened. He charged forward, blade drawn, striking with practiced strength. Jax blocked with his forearm, pain flaring. The two clashed in the dust, mentor against student, master against rebel. Steel rang, sparks flew. Jax stumbled under the commander's weight, but each time he fell, he rose again. The commander sneered. "You were always weak, Jax. Always running from greatness." "Maybe," Jax grunted, locking blades. "But tonight I stop running." He twisted, driving his fist into the commander's face. The man staggered, stunned for the first time. Behind them, Lyra's glow grew brighter. She raised her hands, her silver eyes blazing. Blue energy swirled around her like a storm, humming with power. "No," Jax shouted. "It will kill you." Lyra's voice rang like a bell. "Better me than the galaxy." The ground shook. Light burst outward, throwing soldiers back like rag dolls. Their rifles shattered, their armor cracked. The commander fell to one knee, his face twisted in shock. Jax shielded his eyes, the light burning bright as a second sun. Then it faded. Lyra collapsed, her glow gone. "Lyra!" Jax caught her, pulling her into his arms. She was pale, her breaths shallow, but she smiled faintly, her eyes still soft. "You chose," she whispered. Jax's throat tightened. "I chose you." The commander staggered to his feet, blood on his lips. He raised his rifle one last time. Jax moved faster. He grabbed the fallen blade and drove it through his old mentor's chest. The commander froze, eyes wide, then crumpled into the dust. Silence fell. The soldiers who survived fled into the desert, their courage broken. Only Jax and Lyra remained. He held her close, trembling. "Stay with me," he begged. "Please." Her hand touched his cheek, weak but warm. "Together," she whispered. "Always together." Her silver eyes closed, but her chest still rose. She lived, barely, but she lived. Jax looked up at the stars above the canyon. He had no ship, no plan, no allies. But he had made his choice. He would carry her, protect her, fight for her. Not for coin, not for glory, but because at last he had found something worth dying for. And as dawn broke over the desert, painting the sky gold, Jax carried Lyra in his arms, walking toward the horizon. Human and an alien girl, alone against the galaxy, but together.